supposed to talk now. Is the main switch on?
Yes, it is. We can hear the static, so it's stopping. It must be that unit. Maybe battery. Try to get your batteries. Try that.
No, it would help if I took it off mute. It's on mute. I didn't know there was a middle place. It's the middle way. Really, how could we not think that? Okay. Yeah. New prescription. All right. Okay, so welcome. Do I need to get it closer? Is this working? I get so loud.
Yeah, that's good.
All right. Those of you for not breaking the furniture, for not imitating the teacher, who constantly trips and drops. My name is Tendrin, and I'll be serving you today. Okay. Okay, so I like to start by kind of settling ourselves in this room, in this moment, by just taking a minute to quiet our minds. And it's helpful to sit up straight, kind of gently lower your eyelids, if you're comfortable with that. And then taking, just kind of scan your body with your mind, looking for how your body's doing. Noticing the sensation of the chair or the cushion against the legs. Noticing the temperature of the room against your skin. The sounds of others, or the air-conditioned fan, whatever, traffic in your ears. Kind of relaxing your face, your jaw. Shoulders. And then find the sensation of the breath at the tip of your nose, where it's entering and exiting your body. It can be helpful to take a few belly breaths, and then just let your breath go in and out naturally. So we're anchoring our minds on that sensation of the breath. And this helps us let go of all the thoughts and busyness of getting here and the thoughts of planning for later. Those things might still arise, but we can just use the breath to anchor our minds and let the thoughts just pass through like clouds in the sky. So when you find that you have followed one of your thoughts, become distracted, just let the thought breath arise and bring your mind back to that sensation. Now from within this quieter place, recall the reason you came this morning and try to generate a positive motivation, a positive intention to use your time well. You can combine this with a wish that it not just benefit yourself, but whatever benefit you may have. You just hope that it ripples out to benefit others, those around you, your loved ones. We're putting positive energy out in the world. And again, bring your attention to your body sitting here. Feel the temperature on your skin. Your awareness that there are others around you. And then gently open your eyes. Open. Find a seat. Thank you for being patient. So how are we doing? Yes.
What is the English meaning of your name?
Tendrin. It's my full name is Lundub Tendrin. Lundub is the lineage name. Like my teacher's name was Lundub Sopa. The person I received my name. So Lundub means effortlessly or spontaneously, and Tendrin means teachings, and drun means lamp. Lamp. So effortless lamp teachings. It's called an aspirational prayer. They give us names. So, as you all know, it's never effortless with me. Although I am spontaneously amusing. Anyway, but so yes, the Tibetans are like many other cultures. Use names to, sort of make wishes for their children. When you ordain, you get names, or when you take refuge, sometimes you get a refuge name. So, my name when I took my full vows in Taiwan, one was wisdom, but that was coming from the Tendrin lamp on the tip, So again, an aspirational prayer. But the other one she gave me was determined. So, it was determined. So that always amuses you. So anyway, How's your mind today? Oh, well, then let's not do anything, because we might change that. So I was asked last week, actually I was asked like a couple of weeks ago, to talk about meditation, to actually talk about it so that people know what it is. So that, so I'm going to start there, but we can leap to anywhere we want to go. So what is meditation? What does the word meditation mean to you? Or what does it bring up? Not people who are Buddhists know what it means in Buddhism, just, in general.
It's clearing of the mind.
Clearing of the mind.
Impossible. I said impossible.
Impossible. Meditation is impossible. Okay, we want to break that connection. Okay. No other thoughts? Because it's certainly common. You hear the word meditate all the time.
I always consider it to be stopping the world.
Stopping the world.
Analyzing.
Analyzing. You see, it means all sorts of things. Okay.
Sitting quietly.
Sit quietly or stay quietly. Okay.
Being aware.
Being aware.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stillness.
Okay.
Stillness.
Stillness. Absolutely.
Watching the mind.
Okay. So we're kind of getting there, with all the different parts. So in Sanskrit, the language, well, I don't think that was the language at the time of the Buddha, because I think Pali was the language at the time of the Buddha. But, later Sanskrit became, all the teachings were transmitted in Sanskrit as well. And the word they used was bhavana, which comes from the verb bhu, which means to become, to make something into something else. And then when it was translated into Tibetan, the word is gom, G-O-M, and this means to become familiar with, or to habituate ourselves to something that is positive. So when it's used in this context, it is in particular to try to work on transforming your mind from the negative to the positive. In order to do that, however, you also need to develop the skill of becoming aware of where your mind is. Otherwise, you can't transform anything. So when we take an object of meditation, which might be the breath, that's a particular type of meditation object, and that's really to learn how to discipline our minds to listen to what we tell it to do. And it has this wonderful side effect of calming our mind down from all the, what do we call it?
Chatter.
Oh, the chatter works. Rumination,
Racing thoughts.
racing thoughts, that's sort of where I was going. So, so by anchoring our mind on an object, whether it's the breath, an image of the Buddha, a candle flame, that helps us come to the present and not, because when we really start to look, so many of our thoughts are about the past and the future. We kind of don't live our lives because we're either planning or we're remembering. So this effort of stabilizing our mind on an object helps us become aware of what we're experiencing now. So we not only experience, the sensations in the body, but we interpret those, don't we? So our mind kicks in kind of right away. So it's about also not just, like physical, being aware of the body. It's bringing our awareness to how we're responding to what's happening. To the mind itself, to our thoughts, to the way we're processing whatever's happening. And we know now, science certainly supports it, how important the mind-body interdependence is. So, a really negative of mind can affect ourselves physically. Being in a very severe pain can have an effect on our, well, or even like myself, very minor pain can distract us, especially when trying to meditate. It's like, oh, of course, my knee really hurts. Let's just think about that, So that's not skillful. So this is sort of the point. So with stabilizing meditation, you're helping train yourself to listen to your instructions. So, and mindfulness, the quality of mindfulness, the state of mind of mindfulness is remembering that, remembering the instructions. So like, we can often practice it in little ways, like, you're going to do some mindful walking. So you mindfully walk from your parking space to wherever it is you're going, or vice versa. So what are you remembering then?
To be present.
The present
Of what?
Of walking.
Of walking. So if you want to do mindful walking, you have to remember that that's what you're decided to be mindful of. So it's that simple, except following instructions, we're not so good about. We're just, we're fine about following instructions of what others tell us to do. But thinking that our instructions to our mind are equally important, possibly more important, is something we seem to have to train ourselves in. Because, and so one of the things we have to look at, and one of the ways in which developing awareness of what goes on in the mind, one of its benefits, I got lost in the middle of that, being able to remember where you were going. Okay. So, yeah, we'll go back to discipline. Okay, so listening to, anchoring your mind on your breath. Obviously, if that's all we did with our time, it wouldn't be much of a life, would it? So the point in meditation isn't to be able to just sit for as long as you want, as still as you want, keep your mind as still as you want. The purpose of meditation is to really learn to become familiar with our own mind, our own thoughts, and then be able to discern what's skillful and what isn't. Because then we can decide what states of mind do we kind of want to reduce, and what states of mind do we want to cultivate. And we can't do that unless we know what our habits of mind are. So sitting quietly can help us, and it's not just, if we sit quietly, it helps us train our minds to notice. So if we take the object of our mind, say we take the breath as the anchor, and after we've really settled the mind for a few minutes, then we relax our control on the breath, and we just notice the pattern of thoughts that arises in the mind. To kind of see, do I spend a lot of time in the past? Do I spend a lot of time worrying about the future? Do I spend a lot of time worrying about the past and the future? So we could just kind of look at those patterns. And those will become that informs us. So this, paying attention brings us the information we need to make decisions about what we want to do with our minds. And we all know how important the mind is. We get it in the sense of knowing that if you want to, think of something you want to learn to do. Anybody want to learn anything?
Speak a language.
Speak a language. Okay, let's speak a language. So, what is one of the important ingredients to learning to speak a language?
Memory.
Well, that would help, wouldn't it?
Practice.
Motivation.
Loudly.
Motivation.
Motivation. You have to keep remembering that you really want to learn it. You have to, you have to want it. So one of the things that we need to do with taking up this idea about, oh, do I really want to know what's in my mind? Is be convinced it might be useful for us. So in this particular tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, the method for doing this, and I think this is universal probably to all the different traditions in Buddhism, is there are 3 steps in this process. So the first is hearing the teachings, or listening, or reading these days. So whether it's YouTube, a book, or coming to a class, so you hear about what the instructions might be. Then thinking, or contemplating, or reflecting on what you've heard. And then meditating on it. So that's the 3 steps. So obviously, for just something like learning how to settle the mind, there's not a lot of instructions for that. I mean, they're pretty basic. The skill's not so basic. But the instructions to developing the skill are pretty basic. However, you still need to understand why in the world would you want to do that. So one of the first things we need to listen just to hear, like what the instructions might be, what's the purpose of it, all those kinds of things, trying to understand the point. And while we're listening, we want to develop the ability to discern or discriminate between this and that. We have this state of mind sometimes it's called discrimination, sometimes it's called recognition, sometimes it's called discernment, but it's this ability to really be able to, discern that this is that and this is this. That's the basic skill. We can tell the difference between objects, and not just physical objects, but mental objects. So when we're listening, it's helpful to really try to make sure you understand what this is and what that is. To kind of, so this is what we do when we study, isn't it? We just, and when you're learning a language, there's a lot of new stuff that you have jargon that you have to learn, you have parts of speech or something, but hopefully you're just listening to babble and it's just, conversational, fun stuff. But these, so one of the examples I was reading about was like how babies can distinguish, that's another word we can use, distinguish between being hungry and not being hungry. They don't have words for it, but when they're hungry, they'll take food. When they're not hungry, they'll push it away. So that means they're able to discern or distinguish between these states in their own mind, this hunger, and and also the object which meets that need. So we've listened, or read, or heard. We need to think about it in order to understand it, and we try to think about it from many different points of view. So that's a skill we try to develop. Is we want to do more than just memorize something. We want to really understand what's being said. So we might read different explanations. We might hear different teachers. Different ways of looking. And then we just think about it. We kind of look at it and go, what does that mean to me? Does this make sense? Is it really helpful to be able to quiet the mind to train, I mean, I already have a lot of things to do. Do I really want to spend 5 minutes more a day with another thing, So we look at what might be beneficial about this, Why would I want to learn this? What's the purpose of it? So, you get the idea? This is pretty straightforward stuff. And then, in order to finally decide to make something our practice, we have to be convinced of its validity, of its usefulness. And this involves more than just the listening. Now you're trying it out. You have to experiment with it, test it out, and give it the time to see what might happen. And what do you need to do in order to see what might happen? You have to do it, and you also have to do what?
Practice.
Yeah, you have to practice, and then what? Reflect on whether or not something happens. So it's oftentimes we'll do something for a few weeks, but we don't pay any attention if it's having, and if we can't really see if meditating in the morning has, causes certain things during the day, but we might be able to discern if something seems better or clearer or less chaotic or this or that. So it may, obviously in the beginning it would be just a little bit. And actually what we usually notice is after several weeks of trying it out, that when you don't do it, that's what you notice. Oh, yeah, I can see a difference between the days when I do it and the days I don't do it. So that's a particularly effective thing to notice. So that's important. So that, again, brings us back to the idea that sometimes our object really does need to just be our own mind. We need to learn to be paying attention to what goes on in the mind. And this isn't just on our cushion. This is, that's a habit. We can practice on a cushion, but do it all day long. Just kind of be aware. This is that stepping back part and sort of watching our lives a little bit like a movie. So we're just kind of seeing what's going on. So the part of our life is the good news is when you're doing that, it helps you actually be present for your life, or at least it lets you know that, oh yeah, I'm not really paying any attention to what I'm doing at all. I'm thinking about, the weekend trip coming up, which might be good too, but, we just need to know what's happening. And when we're trying to change a habit, it becomes critical information to see if it's, a habit we want to pursue. Is that good? There are two categories of meditations, basically. There are many meditations, but they're basically two, they fall into one of two types, unless you're doing both. Stabilizing or single pointed type, meditation, concentration meditation, and analytical meditation. What have I seen other words to describe that? Insight meditation, whoever said that. So in Sanskrit, it's like shamatha and vipassana. Those are the words. And they're getting at, from one, from a state of concentration, wisdom can arise, insight can arise. And the more you develop your stabilizing meditation, your concentration, you can achieve a level in which you can maintain your focus no matter what you're doing. This is a very high level of concentration called calm abiding. From within that kind of state, you can have really profound realizations or insights.
So going within would be a good definition for your meditation.
Yeah, it's all, well, because it's a mental process. And so since we can't see our minds, it's easier to focus on our minds if we just go inward. It isn't, because the mind's really not in a place, when but having all the other things out here in our face, when we're beginners, can distract us from what we're trying to focus on. So this is why you don't really need to close your eyes, but what you do want to do is at the very least soften your focus so you're not actually looking at anything. The advantage of keeping your eyes open or slightly open is it keeps you awake. Because meditation isn't about falling asleep. It could just have that benefit, side effect, if you relax. So, but it's really about becoming more aware, becoming more familiar with. Okay? So, that's an important detail, of course, that meditation is a mental process. It's a mental activity. So there are different styles of meditation. They all have different purposes. So when you're beginning, studying Buddhism, a lot of teachers recommend what's called a glance meditation. And so that's something like taking a short text that covers all the steps on the path to enlightenment and just reading them. It's a glance meditation. You're just reviewing the steps. And this helps get it into your head, So it can help you remember where different things that you're studying or thinking about fit in this path. Because that's what Buddhism is. It's a path out of suffering. So it's not just a technique like meditation. It includes techniques like meditation, but the Buddha taught how to reduce our suffering. And he teaches it all the way to its final conclusion where there is no suffering and you're enlightened. That's a long, long process. The good news is we can benefit from the tools right away and just reduce our suffering or get a handle on what's going on in our mind to feel like we have more, that when we're making decisions or, that we're coming from more of a calm, stable place rather than just from all over the place. So we use mindfulness, attention, and concentration. Attention is, so like intention, when we set an intention, it's sort of we're moving our mind to a particular direction. Attention, these are just the ways that in our Buddhist texts they're making the distinction. Attention is when we're zeroing in on a particular aspect. So when meditation, we set an intention. Okay, I'm going to meditate on love, And then when we get to that part of the meditation, we focus in on that object of love. So we may have an analytical meditation where we're looking at something that the texts say about how you can expand your capacity for love, and you kind of look at the steps and you kind of go, well, is that true? And you look back at, your own experiences and then you try to, you kind of look at it, and then maybe something actually shifts in your heart, where you kind of feel like you understand something in perhaps a deeper way than just when you're reading a book. And then you use your concentration to just stay in that. So now you're not using, it's a lot like having a discussion with yourself. So you're having this discussion and then you understand some point in a new way and then you quit moving. You quit discussing. You just stay there. And this helps the understanding become more internalized. Not fleeting, where you just, how many of you read a book, a Dharma book, or, and you're reading it, it's a great book, you recommend it to others, and then what? I don't know. You really have no idea what was in it. It's like you kind of, you know, that's why listening is not enough. You know, you need to go to that next stage of thinking about it, and then the final stage of actually meditating on it, so that it becomes part of you, not just part of this book. That sounds really good. Like most of my Buddhist knowledge is in here. That's not its best place, you know? So you have to, you know, you're trying to understand it and making it a part of you. You know, that's how these tools really work well. You know, whether you're Buddhist or not. I mean, it's like, if you understand from an experiential level why meditating, you know, using some, you know, stilling your mind, having a calm mind from which to analyze something, and then when you have points of understanding, being able to stay focused on that, how beneficial that is, you know, it just becomes part of your habit. It's just something you do, so that you know, when you're reading a really good book that's not a murder mystery, like my personal choice, you do this as you're reading it. You know, you kind of pause. You don't just plow through the book like it's an assignment, like the reading list over the summer that we used to have. You know, you actually want to experience it. Okay, so we're going to do a little, yes, please.
Is there a difference between thinking about things and writing like things?
I think that's sort of the same process. But as long as you're thinking about writing about it. You know what I mean? I mean, in other words, say you're making a list of things to do with the hopes of remembering it when you go to the store. You know? Okay? Now we don't have to worry about that because we just stick it in our phones and then it serves as our brain. But it isn't going to do that if you're just copying the list from another list and, you know, you're not really thinking about it. You're just copying it. You know what I mean? So it's not actually helping you remember it. So when you're journaling it, I would think that you're thinking more about, you know, it's part of the...
thinking more of a conversation with yourself.
Right.
You say have a conversation with yourself.
Yeah.
If you have a conversation,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not with you all day long. It's
Right.
in a journal.
Yeah, that's right.
But
it's, yeah, it's the same idea. So just like we read in teachings now instead of hearing them, you know, of course, when all these spiritual leaders started their workbooks, you know, so it's all completely an oral tradition. That's why they tend to be very repetitive, because, you know, to help with this remembering them. So yes, I mean, I think journaling is helpful. When you meditate, though, then you're taking sort of what you've already thought about and from within a settled mind where you're not really doing what you were doing when you're journaling, but now looking at the parts, the components of it, and following the logic of the teachings. You know, so the thinking part's the biggest part. Well, the listening probably is too. You know, so yeah.
Journaling has helped me in that you're putting down your thoughts on paper, and then sometimes you see patterns in your thoughts, for me, or things that you, like one time I was journaling, I said, God, I'm so negative, and I didn't realize that outside of writing it down. Yeah.
I think it's very helpful for that. It might not be helpful if it's something that doesn't come naturally to you.
Mm-hmm.
Some people aren't journalists, you know, so don't worry about it. It's not something you have to take up. So, but yes, if you know, it's something that works for you. But you know what? And it's also really good at being able to look back and seeing change. You know, because we're not very good about rejoicing about our changes in a positive direction. Or sometimes we need to find out we're going in a negative direction. But whatever, we just need to know. You know, it's not about judging ourselves. It's really just, it's informing us on what we want to work on or not work on. Yes?
Isn't that kind of a meditative state if you give your journal, if you like to journal
No.
and then kind of get into it? So
Yeah,
it's
you
like
can get into the zone, but it's not a meditation.
zone.
Meditation has a very particular purpose. So zoning out isn't meditation. a lot of people get very attached, which is not a good term, but they find the effect of sitting quietly so pleasant that that's all they seek. And so that becomes like chocolate candy for me. It just becomes, I desire something nice, so I'm going to have a piece of candy. Someone who gets attached to that feeling of peace in meditation is using it the same way. It's like, and that's not the purpose. If we want to really transform our habits of mind, then we don't want to develop just another addiction. That doesn't actually change our mind. We're already quite good at liking to stay in a pleasant place. So post-vacation depression, pre-vacation depression. But this is, so this is the thing. It's not that it's a bad thing to enjoy meditation. That's not a problem. It's when we don't seek to do anything else but get into sort of this calm, and then we zone out. We just kind of, and that's not particularly productive. Now, and this is not always easy to distinguish between, so because you could, focus can feel like that, so it's hard to, it's not. We can easily mistake one for the other. And that's just something from experience. You have to start. Are you really moving forward? Are you just staying in the same spot because you like it? Because, some of the things that we examine in meditation are not pleasant. Why would that be?
Because you can see your negativity, you can see like dark places where you didn't realize you had.
Right, so if you're trying to open your heart to be more loving, more compassionate, what is it you're trying to overcome?
The opposite.
The opposite of those. The selfish greed. What about me, mine, all that kind of stuff. So we have to look at those things and see how unskillful they are to getting us to having more peace or more happiness. Is that making sense?
Yes. Yep.
So, fortunately, it's not like just about that. We also have all the foundation or basics for all this, for this positive qualities of mind. We couldn't learn to expand compassion if we didn't have it at all. But we do have compassion. We have compassion for small children. We have compassion, when they're struggling with something or really sick. We have compassion for puppies and kitty cats and, little anything, basically. Framed that way. So, we can learn compassion, but when we want to expand it, so it's not just about the cute, cuddly stuff, or when we discover that some things that look so cuddly, like, koalas, might not be a good thing to cuddle, so, but we still can have the same loving kindness and compassion for something that's a mess, whose habit energies is to harm. We might want to stay out of their way, but it doesn't mean we can't have loving concern and compassion for their suffering or for their habit of striking out. In spite of Disney movies, with the horrible, mean hyenas or something, so. Anyway. So now we're going to do, now at the very beginning, what we do at the very, very beginning of every class is try to settle our mind. You know, so we have sort of an idea of that. So we're going to do that for a very, you know, like instant. And then I'm going to lead you in a analytical meditation, which is a lot like what we're already doing. But, you know, this is the thing. So it's a lot different of an experience when you're doing it yourself, because you're leading it. You're directing your mind over what you consider important or the points you want to investigate. So it's a very, you know, all we can do is give you examples of how to do it, but it is not the same experience when you do it on your own. You know, if you put the effort in to really examine it. Do you have a question, Jeff?
Yeah, when you do the body scan, what is the purpose of recognizing I have this pain in this part of my body, that part of my body? So I'm aware of it, but I've been aware of it all along, even before I did the body scan. So what is the purpose of that?
The purpose is that sometimes when you bring your awareness, it will release. So like if you're holding your shoulders up here, or you're holding your mouth tight, or your eyes, I don't know about you guys. The first time I heard, you know, a meditation facilitator say, soften your eyes, it was sort of like, what? And then, you know, you just do. It just softens because you thought about it. It's like, oh, that's better. You know, so you might not be aware of those things. But also it's just checking in with your body. Oh, yeah, that's the way it is. It's not about judging it, coming to some conclusion about it. It's just noticing, you know. And so when you're, when you sit down in your own home in your comfortable spot, you know, to meditate, you know, you probably won't need to do that. You know, but when you're a beginner, it's helpful to just kind of notice, you know, and then kind of settle. And you just settle down.
It's a sense of control that you feel about yourself.
Let's hope not. Let's hope it's just more of that awareness. What we're looking for is just awareness, not control.
No, the fact that you can manipulate these thoughts for your good.
That, yes, it's about discipline.
Right.
Yes, where you're going, so you can, you know, even scanning your body is
Right.
about discipline. Any instruction you give your mind and then you follow through is training your mind in discipline. And we just want to be sure, this is the listening and thinking part, that it's a constructive activity, not figuring out how you're going to get even, which we already know how to do well. You know, we have our focus. We analyze all the different ways we can get even, and then we try to follow through, or hopefully abandon ship. But you know, so as we have these skills, what we want to do is cultivate them in a constructive manner so that they work for us instead of keeping us getting deeper and deeper into habits that don't help us reduce our suffering. In fact, they increase our suffering. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Is the scanning also a sort of grounding?
I don't know. And I'm only saying I don't know because we're not going to stall any longer. Not that you're stalling. I'm going to start this
I'm
meditation.
sorry. Okay.
Yeah. Because I can stall forever. Which is why we so rarely do them in class. So, because I get stage fright. So, it's hard to lead people and meditate. I mean, it's not hard for everybody. Some people are really good at it. I'm much better about this silently to myself. So, anyway, okay. So again, try to find a comfortable sitting posture. And you might gently shrug your body into awakeness since we've been sitting here for a while. And then gently lower your eyelids. And try to see if you can just bring your attention to the muscles in your face. Relax the area around the eyes or the jaw. And then take a few breaths. And let your mind be filled with the experiences that are happening now. The temperature of the room, the sounds in the room, the sensation of the breath, the pressure of the chair or the floor against your body. And just let the peaceful rhythm of your breathing help you to just let go of any worries. The Buddha said that all sentient beings are alike in wanting happiness and wanting to be free of suffering. So just silently ask yourself if you're yearning for contentment, for peace of mind, for happiness. Are you seeking something? Now try to find examples from your experiences when you thought that something would bring a sense of fulfillment but didn't. And examine the experiences from different angles, checking into what your expectations were. Were they mostly directed outward, depending upon what others might do? Or just their judgment of what you have done? Does your success rely upon how others perceive it? Were you hoping for praise or admiration for others? Or is it just about the accumulation of material things? Did it involve relationships with others? Did you embody the qualities that you look to receive from others? Now bring to mind an experience that did bring you a sense of fulfillment or contentment. You found satisfying. What was the source of the fulfillment? Did it involve others? Was the source something outside of you or within you? So again, bring your attention to your breath, to the sensation of the body sitting in this room, your awareness of others around you, and gently open your eyes. So it's just a process of examining. So it can involve a single sentence that you've seen in the teachings that resonates with it, or that you have tremendous doubt about, and so you want to check up. Sometimes it can be about a method that's very precise in a way. So there's a teaching on how to develop more compassion. And so the steps are things like where you start with thinking about equanimity, trying to recognize that even though we have different kinds of relationships with people, our labels of friends, enemies, and strangers are just dependent upon, what you're getting from them in any moment, whether, so, and that's really very relative. So that, we can expand our feeling of compassion for all beings, if we recognize that they're all the same. They want happiness, they don't want suffering, they're struggling to figure out how to do that. Doesn't mean we have to like them in order to have compassion for them or even know them. We all see things on the news about total strangers, and compassion easily arises. So, you know, so we just try to approach compassion from a sort of a neutral place in the sense of not worrying about labels like friends, enemies, and strangers, but not neutral in the sense that, you know, we kind of want to include everybody in our, you know, family. So, and it's a process, you know. So there's steps that you do. So you think about equanimity, and then you think about how you are similar. Like, you know, if someone's suffering, you know how that feels. You can relate to that, you know. So you can kind of, but we have a tendency to look at things from our own point of, you know, from our own self-interest kind of thing. So what we're doing in equalizing ourselves with others is instead of making ourselves first, we consider ourselves equal to others, and we exchange places. So then we start thinking about, you know, others' needs first instead of our needs first. You know, so this has a step-by-step process. And so when you're doing this in meditation, you can be examining the logic of the steps. Just looking at it going, does that make sense? You know, looking at it and really trying it. You know, and then you're, you know, so you do that when you're thinking about it, and then you give it a try, and then, you know, so you're trying to experience why these steps are in this order. You know, that kind of thing. So when we're beginners, we spend a lot of time really just investigating, thinking about it. It's not about sitting for an hour in a perfect position, you know, which has tremendous benefits. There's a reason why, you know, great yogis do that, because it's a very stable posture, you know, and that helps you just focus on this mental events. But for most of us, we don't have the time to be, you know, a day, we don't have the time to spend enough time in practice in order to achieve that stability of body and then that stability of mind. But that doesn't mean that, as you know, people with much busier schedules and all this kind of stuff can't take bits of it and benefit from the bits. You know, you don't have to be a great meditator or a great yogi, because great meditation just means you showed up. It's a really important part. It's just like, okay, I said I'm going to try out meditating every morning for, you know, 3 minutes for the next week, and you show up. You sit for 3 minutes. And you spend the whole time going, oh yeah, I forgot. What am I supposed to do? Da 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 da. That doesn't matter. The point is that you show up, and then eventually, you know, you remember the instructions, and then you follow the instructions, and you still may not get anywhere with your meditation, but some days you will. So it's not about the, you know, attachment to results. It's about showing up, because we're disciplining our minds and we're learning a technique in order to have more awareness of what's going on in the mind. So the meditation is just showing up to the practice, you know, and doing it. It's not about how it looks or what results you get. Because if you worry about that, then why you do it becomes completely enmeshed with the results of doing it. And that's not an effective strategy. So I don't know if anybody's ever waited tables for a living, you know, and depended on tips. Well, some days you don't deserve your tip. But it doesn't mean people shouldn't tip you, because you did do the work. But we all have bad days. So it's sort of like that. You know, you show up to meditation, you don't worry about it, you know, you don't go, that was a lousy meditation, you know, I need to, step it up or something. You know, if you show up, you know, it's good enough. You know, it doesn't mean you don't keep learning about the tools, the techniques, studying them, trying to remember the instructions, trying to, you know, so that you're not just sitting there like a lump for the rest of your life for 3 minutes. But it's just, you know, really having a firm but relaxed commitment to it. So let's take a minute and just introduce ourselves to each other. Say hello. Yes.
It's up there. It's I don't know you.
There's the natural pause. It's all grab your attention back.
The lady helped me clean up the.
Welcome back. So Gina, hi. And it's Bill, right?
That's Mark.
Oh, and this is Mark, and this is Anthony, and yeah,
Jessica.
Francesca, just by virtue of what, yeah. And that's Beata and Francesca, talking about their beautiful name. And then that's Jack. Peggy, who's in front of you.
Oh, Maria.
Maria. And Marianne. And Lou is standing against the wall. And Aaron? Karen. I should know this. This is my middle name. It's not Lundum Karen Tendron. But, all right. Jerry. Arlene. Debbie. In the back row. Brian in the purple t-shirt. Ralph. With the glasses. Barry. Lisa. They actually remember. It's just like a miracle. And your wife's what? Liz, Marie Liz, Mary Liz, right? Joy. Nicole.
There she is.
There she is. Mary Liz, right? I don't remember. Jack, who's behind you?
Caroline.
That's right, Carol. I should remember. I just met you Thursday. Okay, Melissa? I'm going to let you introduce the people next to you. George. Or they can do it themselves. Monica.
Dawn.
Don. Diane. Evie. Vanessa. I didn't catch that. Christine. Jim. Angela. I'm sorry. Stephanie. I should know. Kathy. Okay, well, thank you. Okay. So this thing about happiness, about our search for happiness, all religions assert this, don't they? They just have different forms of it. You know, like you're seeking a place in heaven. You know, you're seeking, you know, that they're all about, guess what, there's a better type of existence than what you're experiencing at the moment. And they just have different tools about how you get to that place. So one thing I think in our culture, maybe for us older folks, you know, we need to work on sometimes this overcoming the idea that it's selfish to want to be happy. And the reason we want to overcome that idea is because it can become an obstacle to doing, you know, putting into practice the tools and techniques that might help you become happier. Because you won't value the time you spend with your mind. You know, you'll keep putting, you know, oh, it's more important that I go to the gym. It's more important that I clean the house. It's more important that I don't know, dust the shelf. You know how when you're, I don't know, maybe, I don't know. I know for me, my house was always the cleanest when I had exams. Because suddenly everything was more important than studying for the exam. So we don't want our care for our mind to be like that, to where we just, everything else comes first, as if the mind isn't critical to our happiness and the way we handle things. You know, that we all know the impact of stress. Well, we have physical stress, we all know that, the doctor can tell us all about that, but a lot of it's coming from our mind. We're just expressing it in the body. So we want to learn how to reduce it in our mind. You know, having a calm, peaceful mind does not mean we will not have any pains of the body. It just means we might not add to the pains of our body. You know? So it's not like a miracle cure. It's just, you know, but the mind drives our actions of thoughts, speech, and activities. So it's quite important. And we need to value it. And so if we don't value the fact that us being happy, we might keep skipping this part of our life, you know? Now, we don't, you know, most, I think, I'm not really, like, it's not like I have a master's in comparative religions, so I'm guessing here, but it seems like, from the little I read, that we have commonalities across the world's religions about certain things that probably are going to help, like being patient and kind and compassionate and loving and being more other concerned than self-concerned. We're not talking about self-care. Self-care is extremely important. But, you know, this always coming from a place of what's in it for me, you know, trying to shift that. The golden rule, you know, all these things. You know, so it's not like Buddhism suddenly comes up with, oh gosh, y'all are all wrong. We have a completely different view. Now, it's not like that. It's just a different set of tools to try to help us expand this capacity of mind in positive directions. And so in Buddhism, we talk about, you know, the Buddha said that the reason we can all become enlightened beings after lots of work and lots of time is because we have the foundation for that. We have the capacity for that. And that foundation are the good qualities we already have. So it isn't that we don't have these habits already. We just want to expand them and then reduce the negative habits that are getting in the way of that expansion, like greed and jealousy and pride and all sorts of things. So, and lack of knowledge, ignorance being the big one, you know, so we just don't understand exactly, you know, and we're living in a culture, and probably always have done so, that is all about external accumulation, you know, where we gather stuff or skills or, you know, I mean, it's just all about out here, that somehow what we need to do to be happy is to access external stuff. And we don't spend a lot of time hearing commercials about working on your mind. You know? So happiness is a mental state, and so it requires working on the mind. You know? All the external stuff isn't going to do it. Now we need external stuff. You know, we need stuff of survival. You know, it's not like we don't need food, shelter, you know, the things that buy food and shelter, all that as well. And we need that in order to support our spiritual practice. I mean, one of the reasons we're all here in this room right now is we have the freedom to do so. We live in a society that lets us choose this activity. We have the free time to do it. We're not so our lives aren't so fragile that we need to be doing something constantly in order to be able to feed ourselves or have shelter for our kids or whatever, like some people do. You know, they're living in very dire circumstances. We have the benefit of not being in those circumstances. So we have more leisure to work on things that are beyond physical survival. You know, so this is good news. You know, so we want to use that time well, and not just on, you know, shopping, you know, or chasing little sense desires, having another piece of chocolate, you know. So, or let's have another massage. You know, so there are days where I just, you know, you get a massage and you haven't had one for maybe years or whatever, and you go, wow, the world would be a better place if we all had one of these every day. You know, well, that's not true. We can kid ourselves, but, you know, and it certainly would be perhaps a good condition, you know, but who's going to give all those people giving those massages? Well, I guess we will. Oh, my goodness, that sounds like work. Then what are we stuck? See, this is the thing. You know, we're a community of people. We have to help each other. We do things for each other. That's how we survive. Everything that we have, every necessity that we have is dependent on thousands of people, strangers, you know, and we all meet them. So this idea of expanding our compassion, expanding our love, you know, helps us remember the kindness of everybody. Everybody that's, you know, present. So, and all those people past, I like to think about farmers, you know, saving seed, potatoes, or, you know, like if farmers weren't long-term thinkers, we'd have no food. Like, it's like unbelievable, the kindness of it. One time I was flying over like a little, I don't know where it was. I'm going to say England because that sounds nice. And I looked out the plane window, and there was these little trees, you know, and I thought, somebody's planet, a tree-lined drive. It's just not manifest yet. You know, right now it's just a bunch of little trees in 2 lines. You know, it kind of looks ridiculous from the sky. But one day, somebody's going to be walking down that lane or driving down that lane. It's going to be lovely. Not the people who planted them. It's going to take too long. It's because they were kind enough to not be thinking about them. You know, they're just thinking about the future. So it's, you know, this is the kind, and we have, you know, we all have this capacity. So anyway, that was just my pep talk for myself. I don't know why I went there, but I did. So, this is why. So all this worldly stuff, you know, and the survival stuff is good for supporting us. We need it. So even in our spiritual practice, we need it. You know, so, and it also, there's no harm in having simple pleasures. What's the trick is learning what is adequate. You know, so that we have a balanced life and we don't spend all our time, you know, accumulating what we see as necessities of life, but that we also spend time on cultivating our good qualities. Because when we look at what experiences give us fulfillment, it usually doesn't involve just an accumulation of stuff. You know, so we want to really get in touch with what really matters to us and cultivate the tools and techniques that help us get it. And generally that means we have to change our ways of thinking, so that we become a condition. It's sort of like, you know, when relationships don't work out, you know, we really have to look at what was my part in that? Did the way I behaved, did it set a condition to receive what I want to receive? You know, because nothing is one-sided. It's a two-sided thing with everything, because we're all so interdependent. So, working on our mind, learning what is, you know, finding that balance, finding what is adequate in our external needs, you know, and what is adequate in the time that we spend on our minds, just like the time we spend in our bodies. You know, recognizing that when we when we zero in on only one facet too much, it overtakes the rest of our life because we do have limited time. So we want to learn how to use it well. And so the more we can take a moment to think about, what do I want out of this next hour? What would be using my time well? Thinking that, what I'd really like to do is be able to go goof off somewhere, whatever. Is that true? It's really like really finding that balance. Do you want to spend? I want to spend quality time with my partner or my kids, or I want to read a book that I've been putting off, or I want to do some meditation, or I'm going to go, whatever. But I mean, it matters. The whatever doesn't mean it doesn't matter. The whatever means I can't decide that for you. So it's about, really reflecting on, what is important to you. What part is you in the picture? And it's usually like one of the things I really like to look at a lot is how most of the things, like if I was on my deathbed, how would I like to be, what would help me have more peace going, instead of all those regrets, I should have done this, but was I kind? Was I loving? Was I helpful? All those things. Those all come from someone needing something from us. Our good qualities expand because someone asked something of us. And so instead of running away from those things, being able to be happy that you have the time to do those things. So it's for some of us, it comes naturally, and for others, it's a training, I mean, I really have to train in being helpful. So I'm a selfish person, and Buddhist training has really helped me flip that over. So, and so I'm happier now. I'm more peaceful now. I have fewer regrets now, But it was a training for me. It wasn't something I just did, So, but we all have to start where we are, So. It isn't magic. When you see people who have these qualities, the Buddha just would say they practiced for, in other lives, and they're bringing that habit with them here. So it's not like we don't have the capacity, we just haven't practiced enough. It's because it's not magic, it's effort. So that's the good news. It's good news. Anyway, okay. We don't have time for the second meditation. I'll use it next week. Okay, good deal. All right, announcements.
Next week is the 10:15 meditation.
Oh yeah, so next week is the 10:15 meditation. So there's a little 30-minute meditation, then we have a 15-minute tea break before class starts. It's usually very lightly guided, but really depends on me. I just get to choose, so who knows what it will be. But it's helpful if you want to do that, is to come on time, because we generally don't want, we kind of close the door once we start so that it's actually a time where people aren't, there's not a lot of interruption to it. Because sometimes some people's homes never provide that condition. So, that's why if you live in a very hectic environment like a school dorm or a prison, and they don't have this option, but if you have noise canceling headphones, it's a great tool if you happen to be in a noisy place or learning how to push everything in the background. You don't have a quiet place to meditate. Okay, so that's next week.
Also, in 2 weeks from today, we'll go pick up Venerable Rubina, so she'll be here on Monday.
On Monday night, so yeah, so it's really not 2 weeks from today. 2 weeks from today, we'll have Medicine Buddha Puja and then class. And then Venerable Rubina starts teaching the next night on Monday night. So I think there's information about it on the website as well as somewhere. The bulletin board. Venerable Rubina has been a nun for quite a long time, been a teacher for quite a long time. she's Why I'm a Nun. She was the second person I heard teachings from. She's dynamic. So, she's from Australia. That's all I know. She'll tell you the rest. Yes,
So every night's gonna be a different topic with her, right?
probably, yes.
It's not like a sequence.
Right.
And then there's a weekend thing.
Yes, and then the weekend's 11 to 4, Saturday and Sunday,
Yeah.
the 28th and 29th. And also, I do need some volunteers, if anyone's interested in helping us during that week, please write your name on the little desk right outside here, under the bulletin. And
With
then,
your phone number or something?
yeah, your name and phone number, or email, whichever preference you prefer to get in touch with. Thank you for that. And then I just want to mention, or if you want to share with us your experience with the 16 guidelines, because we'll have that workshop coming up in
Oh, in May. So there's going to be a Friday night, Saturday, Sunday afternoon workshop in May on the 16 guidelines. This is a class that was developed through this organization, FPMT, to help bring these good qualities of mind, this, these character traits, as we kind of tend to call them in our society, about how to look at things without any Buddhist jargon type stuff. So isn't that true?
Yeah.
Am I
It's
making
a
that up?
tools
Or
for
should I head down?
It's tools for developing a happier and more meaningful life based on how we think, how we act, how we relate to others, and how we find meaning.
Did y'all hear that?
Yes.
Okay.
Very good.
Yeah. So it's really good for parents. It's good for partners who say one is interested in Buddhism and one is not. It's just a good way to bring them into so they see that you're, not doing something really weird here, and that kind of thing. So it's just another, and having a workshop sometimes just helps accelerate your, because you kind of are getting lots of, ways of thinking about things differently.
And that is something you have to come for the whole weekend
Yeah,
because
it's
they're
a
based on each other. So
Right, they build on each other. It's a workshop, not a series of teachings, and it's a small number of people.
Right.
And we're having someone come from Mexico who's experienced teaching it, and so if you happen to speak Spanish, it's not an obstacle. It's your first language. You can get help with understanding this from someone who can speak it. So anyway.
And that's also the start, the 20th, May 20th, Martha has offered to help us with our family program for children and families, any age from 3 to 15, 16 years old, before class on that Sunday at 9:15 to about 10:30, if anyone's interested in coming for that. It will be based off of the 16 guidelines as well, a little family program. We're trying to do a monthly family children's program starting in May.
And there's also some interest from those who have young children to kind of share child minding so that they can come to class, and maybe just, so that they can share something, whether people take turns, minding the kids, so people who are like this person, Angela is one of these people. The trouble is often the parents never can make it in the same day. So trying to connect them, but we'll try to do that, and this weekend event might be a time to gather all of that. Is there anything?
Is there a sign up for that?
There is. Oh yeah, and regarding that, there is a raffle ticket for $5. You can enter into a raffle, and I think 2 weeks from today, we will be giving away a free spot to attend that workshop for just a $5 raffle ticket. So if you're interested in that, there's another.
So that hasn't been drawn yet?
Right, that will
Okay.
be drawn in 2
So
weeks.
when do you sign up?
You see me, yes, yes.
This is the.
Yes, I'm the big 16 guidelines interest.
Do we have a brochure? We'll deal with that. They're signs and
Yeah.
things. So
Yeah, just let me know if that's something you're really interested in.
do we have brochures yet?
We have the flyers.
We
I
have
do have
flyers,
flyers,
okay.
yes.
All right. Anything else?
That's it.
That's it. Is that right? Okay. All right, so let's read some dedication prayers on page 246. So this idea behind this is that we've had some positive, we've made some positive effort. I don't know if there's enough books around. Please share. Yeah, that's
Flexible.
well, I try to just do it from heart. I find once you get started, you can kind of. Okay, we ready? So the whole idea behind these dedication verses is we're taking the positive energy that we've created in our positive efforts of just like trying to consider thinking about our minds in a different way this morning, and where this, according to Buddhism, these positive efforts have positive results. It's cause and effect. And so we're giving our positive effects away to other suffering beings with the hope to, look towards the day when there are no suffering sentient beings. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled, with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored and finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness, and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never recur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then humanity remains to dispel the miseries of the world. So thank you very much. Thank you. Have a meaningful circulating day.
Yeah.
Depends on the day.